Today, we're going to build a simple Hello World React app from scratch. So what is React? React is probably the most popular front-end JavaScript library for building user interfaces, and it's used for building web applications, websites, and even native apps with React Native. So it's created by Facebook and currently is maintained by Meta and a community of developers. So why do we need a Hello World video? So React is quite mature and has gotten kind of complicated to a point where it's somewhat difficult to get started with React now. I go to the React website, I click Learn React. There is a quick start which I can run. That's kind of handy just to get a base idea. But if I want to actually make my own project, I go here, start a new React project. It tells me how to run without frameworks. Then it tells me that I need these other things. Like, I just want to get started with React. I don't want to go exploring and trying to decide which one of these I need. Like, can I just get started with React? So we're just gonna build an app from scratch without using all this other junk. So just focus on the basics of creating a project and getting something up and running. Now that said, we will, include a few pieces that I think is highly recommended. So let's get started. So what are the prerequisites? So Node is a prerequisite. It's a JavaScript runtime. It's not strictly required for running React. It's a tool that helps with kind of development scripts that we're going to be running. Another thing is the package manager, right? So we're going to be installing different packages, like React is itself a package. So we're going to be using NPM, which is a package manager that's frequently used with Node. So if you need to install this, go ahead and install those. And I'm just going to do Node version. So I'm running 2011 Node version, and then I'm doing NPM version. So these are installed globally for me. I got Node and NPM installed. So, okay, so let's get started. So first, so I have an empty directory. And first thing we want is a package.json file. Let me switch to my IDE, and we're just going to create a new file, package.json. So in package.json, you could create one yourself, like I'm going to. There's also an npm init command, which you can run. You can run npm-help. It'll show a list of commands. One of those is init, which will create, a default package.json file. But since we don't want any junk, let's just create a simple one from scratch. I've got a name, I've got a version, got a description, I got a link to my repo, author license, right? So this package.json file is going to contain some metadata about the project as well as the dependencies it uses. So next, we're going to add TypeScript to our project. So once again, TypeScript is not absolutely necessary for using React. However, it is highly recommended to use TypeScript for your new projects. So TypeScript, what it does is add static typing to the language and adds additional error checking. If I just go to the TypeScript page, it shows me some examples of things it's useful for. And I am using an IDE. I'm using WebStorm right now. A lot of people use Visual Studio Code, but these IDEs have support for TypeScript. So it makes learning a lot faster. Like if your IDE can tell you like, oh, you're doing something wrong, you can figure it out. However, adding TypeScript adds a couple extra steps. So let's add TypeScript. So we're going to run our npm install TypeScript, and we're going to pass this flag save-dev. And let's run it. Okay, so we added TypeScript. Let's see what we have in our directory. So we have, this is for our IDE. We have node modules. So that's where all our dependencies is going to go. So let's take a look at what we have here. Node modules, we have TypeScript, right? We just installed TypeScript, we have it there. Let's look at package.json. This is the one we created manually. So running, installing a dependency like TypeScript modifies it. So let's take a look at what happened to it. So you see this line, dev dependencies. And remember, we passed in this flag, save-dev. So this tells NPM that this is a development dependency, right? So it means it's not required for actually building the production build of our application. So when we'll build a production that's deployed in a server that other people can access, you know, they don't need TypeScript. TypeScript is something just we use to help our development. Another thing you notice is that we created a package.json, package log.json file. So let's take a look at it. And this file tells us exactly what version of TypeScript we used, where we got it from, and it looks like it has a checksum value. So this package is used so that we can reproduce our environment from one machine to another. So if I check in my project right now with all these files and I check out on another machine, I can install all my dependencies using the exact versions and the exact locations where those dependencies came from, right? So my environment can be identical on multiple machines. And this is very useful when working on a team. The next thing we need with TypeScript is a tsconfig.json. So we need to configure our TypeScript. You know, some options of how we compile the project using TypeScript. So we're going to use the recommended option. So in this documentation, they tell you that, you know, there's some recommended bases we can use. So we're going to use basically the recommended config. So we're going to again install tsconfig recommended, and then we need to create a tsconfig.json file. So we're going to go new file, tsconfig.json, tsconfig.json, and we're going to add the following text to it. So tsconfig recommended, this is something we just installed with npm. So we have this. And then this one compiler option we need because we're going to be using React. We're going to be using the React to process JSX. So what is JSX? So JSX is basically an extension of JavaScript. And it's been popularized by React. So in summary, what it does is it lets you basically write this HTML, XML code, basically right in your JavaScript file or TypeScript file. All right, so I think we're ready to actually add React to our project. So npm install React and React DOM. So React is our base package basically for React, and React DOM, it provides DOM specific methods. So DOM is document object model, and basically our HTML, right, that we're going to be seeing on the web page is processed as a document object model. All right, so we got React. So next thing, because we're using TypeScript, we need the type definitions for React and React DOM. So we're going to install the type definitions. Because we're going to be using TypeScript, and the TypeScript compiler will need these type definitions to ensure that we're using these React classes and methods and types correctly. So we're going to install the type definitions for React and React DOM. We just installed React and React DOM itself, so we're going to install the types. Okay, types React DOM. Okay, so we got the types for TypeScript. The next, another tool we need, we're going to use is basically our build tool. So as our build tool, we're going to be using Webpack. So build tool in JavaScript land, often it's called a bundler, because what it takes is it takes a bunch of files and then combines them into a single file. So it doesn't actually do the compile. Oftentimes it, it compresses and does some manipulation. So basically, if once the project gets going, you have a lot of files, at the end you want to have a single file that's downloaded by your single page application. So we're going to be using Webpack. So we're going to install a few things for Webpack. We're going to install Webpack, that's the base. We're going to install Webpack CLI. So that provides the command line interface. So that's how we're going to actually be running the Webpack commands. We're going to install the dev server, because in development, you want to spin up a dev server and actually look at your web page and then make modifications to the code and have them seen on your web page. So it's very useful. We're going to have an HTML Webpack plugin. So that's going to create our index.html file. And that is basically the entry point in our application. And then we're going to have a TS loader, TypeScript loader, because we're using TypeScript. So we're going to install all these things for Webpack. And Webpack also has a configuration file. Now, it is optional. However, because we're using TypeScript, we need to add, we basically need to use it. So we're going to create our configuration file for Webpack. New file, webpack.config.ts. So TS, TypeScript. Now we could use a config.js file, but since we're all in on TypeScript, I just recommend sticking to TypeScript whenever you can. So we're going to create a configuration file here. So let's break this down. So what do we need here? So we need the entry point for our application. This is going to be our file, index.tsx. TSX is TypeScript with JSX, with that JavaScript extension. So we needed to specify here because by default it is index.js, but we're going to be using TSX here. And then we need to use our TypeScript loader for our TS and TSX files. And then this is the HTML Webpack plugin that's going to generate our index.html file. So that way we don't have to, we don't have to add this boilerplate in our project. All right. So the caveat here, because we're using a TypeScript config file, is that we need Node to understand this TypeScript file, because we're going to be running Webpack from the command line. That's going to be using Node, and Node needs to understand this TypeScript config file. So another thing we need to install is TS Node for this purpose. Okay, so we're pretty much done setting up. So let's see what we have here. Let's see what we have in our package.json file. Let me go to my IDE. All right. So we installed all these development dependencies, and then React and React DOM as our main production dependencies. So we're actually finally ready to write some React code. So we're going to create a new directory called source. And in that directory, we're going to create our index.tsx file. And we're going to create a simple app here import, right? We're using TypeScript code here. We're going to actually use a React component, a very simple React component, class component, which has a render method that's going to render our hello world text. So here we use basically like traditional JavaScript DOM manipulation to insert this div with the ID app in our HTML file. And then you see this ID app, then we grab this element down here. And this exclamation point is here because we were telling TypeScript that it will not be null. So this is part of the type checking. TypeScript also checks for nulls, making sure your things are not null so they don't crash your app. And then we call the React method to create the root for our application. And then we render our hello world class component, right? And this brackets syntax, this is JSX, right? This is JSX's syntax. So a pretty simple app. So let's run this on our development server. This is the command. So node modules bin webpack serve. We are running development mode, so that way it doesn't compress, and dash open, so it's going to open a web browser tab for us. Let's see what happens. Okay, it's telling us where it's at, so we can go there, but opened in my other window. I'll bring it over here. Hello world, right? Let's inspect this. So this HTML file was automatically created by Webpack, so it's all here, and our app div was inserted here, and React added the hello world here. So this is development server, so it's still running. As you can see, it's still running until I kill it. So which means I can go to my IDE and I can change this. I can change the text. And then if I go back to the website, see, it refreshes and updates it. So this is a useful feature of a development server. You change your code and you immediately see the results. Very handy. Another helper thing to do is we can, instead of remembering that command every time, the Webpack serve, etc. command, we can add that script here. Scripts. Looks like it's already being very helpful. CodePilot, right? So I did Webpack serve mode development. -- open. Helpful, optional. You can choose to exclude it. And start is a special script that you can run by just saying npm start. For example, let me kill this development server and I just run npm start, and it'll run and open a new web page for me. You see, it tells me what's running here. It's running Webpack serve mode development, and this Webpack is located in node modules.bin webpack, right? That's where it's getting from. Okay, and so we did that. So last thing to show you is how to actually build a production version of this app. Production files are optimized for performance. They're minified, compressed to reduce their file size. Let's do the node modules command. Node modules node modules.bin webpack. It's just Webpack and I tell it production mode, it'll run, it'll create these two files, main.js, that's the bundle, right? And index.html. So what does it create them? Let's look at the directories. It creates them in this dist distribution directory. So we can go there and we can look at them. And we can actually look at this and generated index.html. And it's on one line, right? It's compressed. It's getting rid of any unnecessary white space here. And so these files, mainly index.html, main.js, they can be hosted locally using a local HTTP server like Apache or Nginx, or this whole app could be deployed via cloud providers such as AWS, Cloudflare, Netlify, Render, or Vercel, or others. All right, that's it for this video.